Located where the Ohio and Mississippi rivers meet, we stopped in to get a glimpse of Native American artifacts dating back to 1100 AD in the small town of Wickliffe, Kentucky. Hey folks, welcome to the Down the Road Travel Channel. My name is Will Van Winkle. According to the 2020 census, Wickliffe, Kentucky had a population of just under 700 people. So you wouldn't think much of this small town traveling through, but it is the site of a Mississippian culture that dates back almost 1,000 years. Overlooking the Mississippi River, native tribes built earthen mounds and even permanent houses. This was an important area that was both a ceremonial and kind of an administrative center for the tribes. It's estimated that the population of the area was in the hundreds. Hey, just like today. It is interesting to history buffs, maybe school-age kids learning about native cultures, but I am perfectly aware that many will simply be bored here. There are 2 large platform mounds with 8 or so smaller mounds surrounding the central plaza, which is estimated to have been abandoned in about 1300, with excavations beginning with amateurs in 1913. The site became open to the public in 1932 when Fane W. King worked his way into excavating the mounds. A $1 admission fee was charged for a 1-hour guided tour under the name Ancient Buried City. The tours came under scrutiny because of misleading tactics to try and entice tourists into the area, such as misleading advertising and altering the looks of the mounds. Professional archaeologists opposed these methods to attract visitors because they wanted to preserve and to study the mounds. In 1984, Wickliffe Mounds was added to the National Register of Historic Places, and in 2004, it became the 11th historical site of Kentucky, entering the control of the Kentucky State Park system. Today, there's a museum covering 3 excavated mounds displaying pottery, stone tools, artwork, and other artifacts that showcase the way of life of these tribes, which have been linked to others along the Ohio River into Illinois. And under the State Park Service controls, the museum at the site now costs $6 for adults to tour, $5 for seniors, $4 for children 5 to 15 years old, and $3 for active military. This is a self-guided tour, but I will point out that while we were there, we saw many people just walking into the museum and onto the mounds afterwards. I don't recommend this because the money goes to preserving the history here and operating costs, hiring the park employees, grounds team, all things like that. So without that money, they're just really kind of throwing things away. And there's not a lot of people that were there while we were there. Maybe because it was ridiculously hot. Maybe because it's just not super interesting to most people. I'm not really sure. It is clear that the security here, though, is very lax. Even after a number of artifacts, estimated to be about 800 years old, were stolen during a break-in back in 1988. Things have yet to be found. So obviously, if you see any of these items, be sure to contact the Wickliffe Mounds Historic Site. So what do you get for your $6? Honestly, not much. They really didn't do much to attract visitors after the mounds left the king's control. In fact, if you blink, you'll miss a sign, and GPS led us to the town, but not the site. It actually said we were there about 1/8 of a mile before the turn and gave no further instructions. But we found it. We made our way through the museum. Doesn't seem to be air conditioned, and it was a little warm inside the building. But it was interesting to see artifacts displayed where they were found. But info that we received at the visitor center while paying was very limited. We saw Mound A, which is the largest of the mounds. This is where the ceremonial structures were located and would have been the religious and political center for this particular community. Mound B was built up over a period of 200 years, and layers of this mound were visible in 2000 until 2016, when it was filled back in after excavations. During excavations, though, evidence was produced showing that this was a residential area, stuff like food storage, pottery, charred wood from fires, even burials. Mound C was the community's burial ground. When excavations unearthed remains, they were removed and replaced with plastic skeletons to indicate where the bodies were found, because native beliefs prohibit displaying the dead. Of course, excavations were filled in here as well. Now, it's interesting to note, apparently a lot of children died over tuberculosis or other illnesses, and a lot of times children were found buried around the houses, whereas adults were over at the burial ground. Another interesting fact to note is that, looking at the map, this appears to be part of the Lewis and Clark Exploration Trail, which links Fort Massac, Big Bone Lick, and other historic sites in Kentucky. Is it worth the visit? As I stated earlier, for some, it would be very boring, kind of like, oh, look, a hill. But for history buffs, those with native ancestry, aspiring archaeologists, and just anybody with a thirst for knowledge, especially of how we came to be where we are today as a society or as humans, understanding the past is essential. And those are the people who would love this place. While I do think there could be ways to make it more appealing to guests without altering the history of the site, without altering the look of the site, I understand and appreciate the lengths that the Kentucky and United States Parks Departments went through to respect the Mississippian culture that once inhabited this stretch of land long before European settlers even arrived in New England. Say you're not into any of that. Is it still worth the visit? There are trails behind the mounds, museum, and visitor center that can be explored as well. So maybe you just want to go for a peaceful hike. So I say go for it. But know your audience. For example, had we brought Dana's teens or even my adult kids, they probably would have been over it very quickly. But Dana and I appreciated the site for what it is, and it's simply a way to look back in time. So if it sounds like something that piques your interest, take the short 40-minute drive southwest from Paducah, Kentucky to Wickliffe Mounds State Historical Site on the Lewis and Clark Trail. The one piece of advice that I will give, though, is check the weather. If it's too hot, you'll regret it. If it's raining, you'll regret it, as most of this is outdoors. And again, the museum did not seem to be air-conditioned. If it was air-conditioned, it is not well air-conditioned. The building itself is a metal shed, so there's not a lot of insulation in there. They did have fans going, so it was bearable. We weren't in an oven, but it was still hot. If you've been there, let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Remember to subscribe, like, comment, share, and check out our online store. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you down the road.
Let's hit the road.